from Colorado, grew up in Canyon City. It's about an hour southwest of here. And I joined the Colorado Army National Guard in 1996 as a senior in high school, and joined as a medic. Wanted to get money for college, so there's obviously a lot of different reasons that people join the military, and economic considerations are really a big reality for a lot of people. So I was in the National Guard up in Denver and did a deployment in 99 and 2000 to Hungary and Croatia. Kind of through that experience, I was trained also as military police. And then in 2003, early 2003, I was in a medical unit and got word that I was being transferred to a military police unit since I had had that training and that they were going to be getting deployed. So that was before the war started. The war started in March, and so it was it was a big shock. So for me, kind of the experience of being in the military and getting deployed to Kuwait at the time was, well, it was shocking in a lot of different respects, and one of them was because I totally did not expect to be going, even though it maybe seemed naive, but I was a medic in a medical unit that wasn't getting deployed, and then the next thing I knew, I was reporting like the very next day from when I found out to become an MP and get ready for deployment. So we spent about a month here in Colorado before we went over to Kuwait. And that was during the time when I still kind of had a hope that we weren't going to invade, because I didn't feel like it was justified. I didn't really feel like a case had been made. But you know, we did go in, and about a month after the invasion, our unit moved into Iraq, and we spent the next 10 months there doing convoy patrols and convoy escorts and route patrols. So through that experience, while I didn't agree with the invasion and the war, I had no context from which kind of to think about what the experience would be like, or to think about what Iraq would be like. And so I was definitely in for a lot of surprises, and I think one of the things that really kind of made me want to get involved and feel like I should get involved in some sort of political activity in opposition to the occupation was seeing kind of the futility of what we were doing over there. Our unit, as a military police unit, we were escorting these convoys day after day after day along the route, along the roads in southern Iraq, and the convoys were KBR, which was part of Halliburton at the time, and here are these companies making billions of dollars in profits, being over in Iraq to supply the U.S. military infrastructure that was there, and a lot of it seemed kind of just self-perpetuating, like we were there so that these corporations could make a profit, and we were risking our lives to escort the goods that they were taking from military base to military base. And a lot of times people would get caught in the middle would be just Iraqi civilians. I mean, there are so many traffic accidents for, just on the one hand from military and civilian contractors driving on the roads, because we came in and said, well, okay, our priority of getting our stuff from point A to point B takes precedence over you being able to drive on your road. So if you're in our way, we'll run you off the road, and if we're not going to stop. So I mean, I think talking to a lot of veterans, I know that this was a common occurrence, but one personal experience that we had was to respond to the scene of an accident where a military convoy had been driving on the highway in southern Iraq, which was very barren. There weren't really any towns or anything there. There were a lot of Bedouin shepherds with goats and camels and donkeys, and a little boy had been taking his 3 donkeys across the highway, and a military convoy came, and we responded after the fact, but he was hit, and along with the 3 donkeys that he was trying to herd across the highway, and they were all killed. And so when we got to the accident scene, his body was there covered up with a sheet, and his family was there, and his grandfather was coming, and when he saw what had happened, he was just throwing himself on the ground, just wailing in grief. And that was just kind of a little snapshot, but it just kind of showed that, made me think, what are we doing here? We're taking the lives of innocent people like this little boy, really for what? Just to continue this military occupation, which was really perpetuated and allowed by the fact that we could dehumanize these people and think of them as less than us, and somehow less human than we were, less deserving, less capable of possessing the emotions that we all possess, and thinking that they were the other. And it extended from, our view of the Iraqis to also our view of the what we call third country nationals, or TCNs, which were people from other countries brought in by these large US corporations to work for them, whether it was working in the kitchens in the mess halls or driving the semi-trucks from place to place. People from very poor countries, people from places like Nepal and India and the Philippines, who would be brought over and basically as indentured servants, because these companies would hold their passports and until they fulfill the terms of their contract, and these people are getting paid, pennies on the dollar from what us as soldiers, and then us as soldiers were kind of getting paid pennies on the dollars from what the U.S. contractors over there were getting, and seeing that, part of continuing the occupation was bringing in these people from poor developing countries to work for U.S. corporations making billions of dollars in profits. So in my personal experience in Iraq, stayed there for a year, saw a lot, and was just really struck by all the people, because you think of it, a war, you might just think of the militaries, but it's happening in a country full of people just trying to live their life day to day, who have already suffered this huge crippling blow of a decade of sanctions, which was preceded by another decade-long war with Iran, where 1 million people were killed between those two countries. So you see children who have grown up and all they've known is violence and trauma. And so we talk about veterans having post-traumatic stress disorder and different kinds of trauma from being deployed for a year, or being deployed, maybe multiply for 3 tours. But then you have children who have been experiencing trauma, from their birth. So talk about trauma, and I think one of the things that's just really important is for us to kind of have these kind of discussions and talk about what it's actually like and how this is affecting us, because it's really easy. I mean, a decade of war in Afghanistan, 8 years in Iraq, and it really just seems so far removed. And I think that's one of the things that's difficult as a veteran, is to have gone through this experience of really, putting your life on the line, whether or not you agree with the politics behind it, but sacrificing a lot, supposedly because it's for the well-being of the country, but then coming home and kind of realizing how disassociated most people are with it. And it is hard, I think, to kind of be connected to it, because it is happening far away and we don't really hear a lot about it, and it, that, which are all things that are really great when you want to just continue an occupation without having to justify it or without having to stand up to a lot of scrutiny, is to really distance people emotionally from what's happening, and to think, well, as long as too many Americans aren't dying, then I guess, I don't really feel strongly about it, when kind of we're just maybe shifting casualties onto people in Iraq and Afghanistan. So when I got home from Iraq, it was just full of anger, and also I was really sad about the whole experience, because I felt like it just really, wasn't the reason why I went into the military. And so that's what led me, when I met some other veterans who were talking about starting this organization, Iraq Veterans Against the War, and had been talking a lot with a lot of Vietnam and other area veterans, from Veterans for Peace and Vietnam Veterans Against the War. They really helped us start Iraq Veterans Against the War, and that was in 2004. And then we've kind of gone on from there, and we're headquartered in New York City, but we have chapters all around, and we're working on this campaign, Operation Recovery, and we're sending a team of veterans and civilians down to Fort Hood, because that's where we're going to be focusing. Fort Hood is, they have one of the most highly deployed forces within the entire military. So soldiers at Fort Hood get deployed a lot, have been deployed a lot, and there's a lot of trauma, a lot of untreated issues going on with soldiers there. So that's kind of where we're going to focus now, and later this month a group is going to be down there for a couple months, really working to outreach and find out more about what's happening on the ground, what soldiers are experiencing, what kind of roadblocks they're coming up with when they try to get treatment, and to try to get the command there to take proactive measures to treat it. So it'd be great if you guys want to get more involved. The Civilian Soldier Alliance is a really good organization that's trying to build some power too. So when we got back this group of 7 Iraq vets who kind of were the co-founders of Iraq Veterans Against the War, I mean, I had never been involved in anything politically before, so it was I didn't really have any experience to how to start, how to do anything like this. So, I mean, one, I was really grateful to be connected with all these people who had experience, although there was no one really here that I was connected with in Colorado Springs. So I kind of didn't know what I was doing, but I just tried to start meeting people and talking about it. I met Garrett, well actually Garrett found out about IVAW when he was still in Iraq, but he got back and I met him and some other people. So it's just building those relationships and getting to know people and talking to them about your shared experience and also shared feelings through it. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I experienced was just meeting other veterans who wanted to get involved. I mean, I definitely have met a lot of people in the military, a lot of veterans who don't agree with the war, but at the same time, I think it's really hard for people to kind of take a next step of thinking that they could actively be involved in creating some sort of change, because it's hard to figure out how to do that. And I was very involved with Iraq Veterans Against the War for the first 5 years that we were around. I was the chair of the organization for a little while, and then I was the executive director for 2.5 years and lived in Philadelphia when we were headquartered there. And it was a really intense experience. I think one of the other, kind of difficult things about it is to kind of that you're coming up against something so big that seems so powerful and so immovable, the U.S. military, the U.S. government, foreign policy, and to try to think like, how can I actually impact that change? And I think it did cause burnout for a lot of people who got in and really wanted to make a change. And it's so difficult that, you can despair. So I think that's also why it's important to have relationships with people so you can kind of sustain each other, or else, just like you're going to burn out. Because I mean, you all have been doing this a lot longer than I have, and it can get hard. It can get hard at times. So I don't know. One of the ways I dealt with that is I lived on a sailboat for 6 months, and that helped. But yeah.